As one of the original 3 ranked modes added in Splatoon 1, Rainmaker is quite the beloved mode, and not just because it was one of the first. It is quite a unique mode that promotes fast-paced gameplay and fully takes advantage of the chaotic nature of Splatoon. Unfortunately though, it is a mode that the devs just can't seem to get right. The mode has its problems, and with each new game, we get changes to the mode that alter how we play it. So, I want to take a look at the mode, as it is in Splatoon 3. I want to look at what it does well, where it fails, and speculate what, if anything, can be done about it. While I'm sure we all know what a Rainmaker is, I want to make sure we're all on the same page, as the specifics will be very important going forward. So the objective of Rainmaker is to grab the objective that is sat in the middle of the map, carry it all the way across the map, and dunk it on a pedestal on the enemy spawn. Now the main defining feature of Rainmaker and what separates it from all the other modes is just how much control you are given over the objective itself. Unlike in tower control where the tower moves at a set speed in a set direction, you have full control over how fast the bazooka moves and what path you want to take. This fact alone is the single most important aspect of Rainmaker and defines how it's played at a competitive level. An idea I've mentioned before is the idea of tempo. Despite being a term thrown around in literally every other competitive game that I've ever been in, tempo is not a word you hear much in the Splatoon scene, so it's probably worth throwing in a quick definition. So tempo basically describes how big an impact you have on a game and how quickly that impact is felt. So as an example, both Twizuka and Inkstorm deal similar amounts of damage. The main difference is that Zuka deals its damage immediately while Rain deals it over 8 seconds. As a result, Zuka is higher tempo. Now increasing the tempo makes the gameplay a lot faster. Players who are playing at a higher tempo will be winning fights sooner, moving forward sooner, and painting up parts of the map sooner, getting more stuff done in less time. Now Rainmaker has a really unique interaction with tempo. In zones or tower, no matter what pace your team is playing at, the objective ticks down at the exact same rate. The zone will always tick at 1 point per 0.6 seconds and the tower will always move at the same speed. In Rainmaker though, how fast you gain points is determined by how far you can push Rainmaker in whatever short opening you were given. High tempo plays are rewarded more in Rainmaker as you're able to move further in less time. And it is this that defines the iconic, fast-paced and aggressive Rainmaker meta. Weapons that can do more with small openings are preferred over those that do less. Weapons that have fast movement, fast paint, and to a lesser extent, higher DPS and kill threat. This is why, back in Splatoon 2, even though the Sploosh series of weapons was considered pretty weak and a more casual series of weapons, the Sploosh 7 saw a good chunk of play in the high levels of competitive. And this is because its stats is everything you want in Rainmaker and it had a serviceable kit. You didn't see it outside of any other modes as they didn't prioritize these stats as much as Rainmaker did. Now whether or not these requirements are good or not depends entirely on your own personal preference. Rainmaker has quite a restrictive meta compared to something like Splat Zones. It's not as bad as tower control, but it is definitely on the lower end of weapon diversity. I'm an Ingbrush 1 trick, so the aggression that Rainmaker demands of me isn't that much of an issue. That's literally what my weapon was built for. But if you're one of those weird Elite mains I keep hearing about, Rainmaker's not going to be one of your modes. You can definitely still function in Rainmaker, but you're making the game a whole lot more difficult for yourself and your team by just picking such a slow weapon. Rainmaker is unique not just because of how fast you can move the objective, but also where you can move the objective to. In zones, the objective is stationary. In tower control, it follows a set path. But in Rainmaker, the objective takes whatever path you want it to. If we take Undertow as an example, from the moment you pick up the Rainmaker, you are faced with one question. Do you go left, or do you go right? The right route is the quicker one. The checkpoint is like right there. It's the shortest route, and so you can get a lot of points by taking it this way. Thing is, this route is the one closest to the enemy spawn, so you don't get much time to pull this off. On top of that, the enemy team has incredibly advantageous terrain here. If you want to take this route, you need to make sure it is entirely clear of people, else you won't get far. The left side is a bit different. Just to get to the first checkpoint on the left side, you have to go over twice the distance compared to the right. To make up for this though, you get to move further away from the enemy spawn and into terrain that somewhat favours more extended pushes. It even gives your team easier access to the enemy team's defensive positions, letting you clear them out and let the Rainmaker move more safely. The decision of where you go is entirely up to the player, and adds a layer of skill expression by letting players look at the current situation and figure out, given the current state of the game and what your win cons are, which route will have the best results. This decision isn't limited to the moment you pick up the Rainmaker. You can pick a side or switch sides whenever you want, even mid-push. Best example of this is Sturgeon Sponge. On Sturgeon, there are two main routes again, the right side and the left. The right side is almost always your best option. It's just a lot more open and has a lot better terrain. You can go left, but like, why? You first have to go for a jump off of a really exposed block and then swim down a really tight corridor. The left side does have one benefit though. It's on the opposite side of the map. If the enemy team expects you to go right, they will of course set up on the right side. If you notice that, then you can go left and get a free push, since there's no one on the left that can stop you. But this is where the ability to switch sides comes in. If you're on the left side and the enemy team gets set up on the left, you don't have to stay there. You can just drop down into mid and go to the right. But this sponge, this beautiful sturgeon sponge, means that you don't have to commit fully to the right side. You can use the sponge to jump across into their street, and once in their street you can pick left or right again. If you start your push on the right, you can use the sponge to quickly switch sides and go to the left. Heck, if you want to, you can start your push on the left, drop into court, and then use the sponge to climb back up onto the left side. This sponge really allowed Rainmaker to shine by allowing for some incredible alternate routes, split pushes and mix-ups, and I have been lying to you. Because this sponge isn't even in Splatoon 3. Rainmaker's main strength as a mode, in my humblest of opinions, is in the flexibility it gives to players. How it allows for a lot of skill expression by presenting you with a lot of different options and lets you choose which one's best for your situation. It takes advantage of Splatoon's very chaotic nature by allowing you to change your plans as the situation changes around you. But that only works if you're given these options in the first place. For Rainmaker to shine, we need maps that allow for different routes. We need maps that allow you to change routes at a moment's notice. But for whatever reason, despite having maps like that in the past, these features were removed. In Splatoon 3, the Sturgeon Sponge was a sponge of your colour in the enemy team's spawn. It was very clearly intended to be used by you to help you push the Rainmaker. In Splatoon 3, the sponge did return, but they moved it slightly to the right, limiting your options. In tower control, because in Rainmaker the sponge is gone entirely. They went out of their way to remove all of these options for Splatoon 3. So many of Splatoon 3's maps are straight up hallways that only give you one route to push down. They made them like this intentionally and the mode suffers for it. So yeah, Rainmaker requires maps that are carefully designed to maximize options. But that's not the only thing you need to watch out for when making a Rainmaker map, since there's one other map dependent issue that you need to consider. So the idea of this video came to me when I was spectating a scrim between two teams of somewhat different skill levels. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. The teams weren't super far apart to where they were dominating, but one team was clearly better than the other. It was a game of Museum Rainmaker, and of course the stronger team pushed to a really strong lead. It was really unlikely that they'd ever get a better lead this game, let alone knock out the objective. And so they made a very sensible decision. They made the decision to take the Rainmaker up here and keep it here for the rest of the game. When the Rainmaker carrier died, it just sat there. For the other team, it was really difficult to get to. They tried to pop the shield and let it reset, but whenever they tried that, the other team would just run directly at it and pick it up and just stand there, keeping the Rainmaker there. They were stalling it, running down the clock by making it as difficult as possible for the enemy team to get a push going in the first place. It should be pretty obvious that stalling objectives like this isn't a good part of the mode. Not only is it boring for the team stalling and frustrating for the team being stalled, it's just uninteresting for spectators. It's not fun to watch a team just sit in a corner for 5 minutes waiting for the clock to run out. In my critique of Turf War, I brought up the issue of spawn camping. A common response in the comments, because yes I am still salty about this, was that spawn camping would be eliminated if we just had better maps. And this isn't really the case, but it's a flaw inherent to the mode itself. Eventually, if the skill gap is big enough, the stronger team will run out of things to do, and the only option left for them is to spawn camp. This is kind of also true in Rainmaker, but to a much lesser extent. There will always be corners and awkward spots you can drop the Rainmaker, and there will always be people who abuse that because sometimes it's just optimal. Unlike in Turf War though, there are things that can be done. We already have Rainmaker free zones which speed up the countdown and forcibly reset the Rainmaker back to mid if the halter dies. It's not ideal, since if there's only 20 seconds left on the clock, you can still stall it until the game is over. But they at least do something. But we need more Rainmaker free zones to cover as many stalling spots as possible. This wall on Museum really should be Rainmaker free, yet it's not. And so this issue can maybe not be fixed, but at least be lessened by more liberal use of Rainmaker free zones. So those are my thoughts on Rainmaker. As with everything, it has to come back to the maps, because why wouldn't it? If you have your own ideas of how Rainmaker could be improved, the comments exist. If you think Rainmaker doesn't need improvements, well, the comments also exist, I suppose. But with that, pasta la vista.